Hello, Dominic.
Hello.
Would you like to introduce to us first, please?
Yes, my name is Dominic Dale. I live in Stroud in Gloucestershire, been there for 10 or 12 years. I've lived abroad a few times in places like Berlin and Vienna, and I'm a professional snooker player and commentator, and I've been a snooker player now for, this is my 31st season coming up, so a long time.
Yeah, but probably people would like to know how you started playing snooker at the first place.
Yeah, I think it's a similar story for most young people. Your father buys you a small snooker table, in my case for my older brothers, but they were more interested in playing electric guitars. And
your father bought a snooker table?
A small one, yeah, just a quarter size one, maybe 6 feet long by 3 feet wide.
Yeah.
And I think he bought it for my older brothers, but as I say, they were interested in electric guitars and sort of music of the 1980s. And I had a game on it, I was 7 years old, and I just really enjoyed it, and I seemed to have a bit of a talent for it. I could work out potting angles, and I used to cue with sort of underarm. I could hardly reach the table, and I used to cue like this, but I could pot some balls, and my father probably saw that I had a little bit of talent, natural talent, and sort of nurtured that talent. And through all my school years, I just carried on playing, and I played in snooker leagues in Wales, because I grew up in West Wales. I was born in Coventry, but I grew up in West Wales from the age of about 11. And yeah, I just got better and better. I made my first century when I was 13. And so there was never any doubt that I was going to want to be a snooker player.
Yeah, but from being a hobby to being really serious in the pro, I guess it's quite a big difference. And how many hours you need to practice since you become a pro?
Absolutely. I think when you're in your middle teenage years, when you're 13, 14, 15, and you're still at school, you need to enjoy playing snooker. So you don't want to be doing 5 or 6 hours a day, it's too much. Just 1 or 2 hours a day, enjoy it and practice properly, and don't mess around, just take it seriously and concentrate. It's much easier to do for 2 or 3 hours a day than 5 or 6. And that's the way to improve more, and you become a much better player quicker that way. It's better doing that than playing 5 or 6 hours a day and not taking it seriously. You won't improve as quickly.
And what about nowadays? Do you practice less hours?
A lot less now, because I'm 50 years old. I've been a professional 31 years, and I've played obviously the game at an amateur level before that for 5 or 6 years before I turned professional. So it's a long time. So I do a couple of hours a day in my club, the Match Play in Stroud. It's local to me. It's a 10 or 12-minute walk to the club every day, which is great. And yeah, I practice a couple of hours a day on my own. I don't really travel around and practice with anybody now. And Robert Milkins is only 10 miles away, and so is Jack Lizowski. He's only 10 miles or so away in Cheltenham. But I never really practice with them anymore. I just do my 2 hours a day, and I enjoy my life now because I have a lot of other interests. I like opera and ballet and antiques and things. So
ballet?
Yeah, I love ballet, yeah, and opera. Yeah, I love classical music, and I love the classical accompaniment to the ballet.
But when we talk about ballet, normally we think that's ladies.
I suppose so. I don't think that's necessarily true. It may be the old-fashioned sort of a stigma, really, that is for ladies and certain types of person. But if you like classical music and opera, you should love ballet because the music's absolutely stunning. It's particularly Tchaikovsky's accompaniment to Swan Lake, which wrote, I think, in 1877. He wrote particularly for the ballet, and it's just beautiful. Yeah,
let's talk back to snooker. I wonder what's your first cue and what you are using now?
I still have my first cue, actually.
Really?
I won a tournament on television when I was just about 12 years old in 1984. It was on a children's television programme. So I got to meet some of the top players of the day that were invited there, and I still got the cue. It's only probably 3 feet long. It's a bare minimum. Still have it. You couldn't play snooker with it. I don't know how I played with it then, but I'm one of the players that are very well known for changing cues. I must have used 30 cues in my career and tried out probably another 100.
So what's your philosophy? Keep changing and trying so many different
cues?
It's
something called madness. I'm crazy. You should really have a cue that you like and stick to it, but I've always had an interest in cues and cue making and different kinds of woods that are used in cues, and because of that I've often changed cues just because they look nice.
So you are involved in making cues yourself?
A little bit. I know what specification I like for a cue, and I sometimes have a blank cue made with a tip size that's too big and the taper of the shaft of the cue is too big, because I do a lot of woodworking. I can taper cues, and I'm self-taught at French polishing and lacquering, so I can finish the cue properly and get it playing the way I want it to play. That is the difference between me and all the other players. Sometimes they'll change cues, they don't like it and they don't know how to make it play better for them, but I do, so I can always change a cue if it's strong and I like everything about it, but there's something not right, I can just change the taper, the tip size, the ferrule size. I can do that all myself, and I can get the cue playing how I want to.
And apart from making the cues for yourself, are there some other players asking you to make it for them?
No, but well, I don't make cues, but I can make alterations. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm quite well known for putting tips on for players such as Mark Selby and John Higgins. I've put tips on many times.
Wow.
They always ask me. They'll send me a text when I'm on the train. And John Higgins will say, "Dom says I see you playing this afternoon. Said, can you put a tip on my cue?"
Wow.
And I thought, yeah, no problem, John. Yeah.
That's really interesting story.
They're great. They'll buy me a bottle of wine or give me 20 pounds or something. It's fine. I'll do it all day long for that.
Yeah, that's really great. And after chatting about the cues, I wonder what's your first title, both in the amateur and professional circuit?
Yeah, well, my first tournament I ever won was the Riley National Junior Championship when I was 12.
12?
It was played on a small table, but it was
Okay.
the final was televised on a children's television programme. So I got to meet Steve Davis, Terry Griffiths, Tony Meo, who was a London top 16 player at the time,
Yeah.
and Dennis Taylor, who's still around today as a commentator. So I met those guys, and I remember it was Tony Meo said to my father that he said basically your son could be a really good player if he had a full-size table to practice on. And within about a year, we rebuilt one of the outbuildings in the house we lived in Wales, and I had a full-size snooker table by the time I was 13.
Wow.
And I made my first century break when I was 14, so I made really quick progress. That was the first thing I ever won that gave me the inspiration to carry on playing the game.
And you still remember it so well?
Yeah, I even have a copy of the final when I was just about that high.
Yeah.
And I used to wear this waistcoat. My favourite player was Terry Griffiths, and I used to copy his,
Oh.
had one of these frills that you used to button into your shirt that looked like a Wolves Viennetta coming down your shirt, and a massive great big bow tie that looked like a giant butterfly got you by the throat, you know, one of these great big things.
Yeah. Would you like to turn
I
back
think
a
we're all
little
right
bit?
now. I mean, we're all right. There you go. We can edit that, can't we?
Yeah.
There you go.
And then when you look back, what would you say that was your best match in your career?
Well, I've won 2 majors and a few of the big tournaments as well, but you'd think my first ranking event victory, the Grand Prix, which I won in 1997, I beat John Higgins in the final. He was world number 2 then, and I was ranked 54, so came from nowhere. But my favourite tournament, because it suits my personality, has to be the shootout that I won in 2014.
Yeah.
In Blackpool, you had razzmatazz, you had walk-on ladies, and it was just, there weren't any ranking points attached to it then, so it was more fun. It was something, it was a bit like the 2020 in cricket. We didn't have anything like that in snooker, and the shootout was it.
Yeah.
And you could have fun with the audience. They were all cheering and drinking and clapping and shouting while you were playing. It was very difficult to get that fine balance between being able to focus and concentrate and having fun with the audience and trying to treat it a little bit like an exhibition. Unfortunately, you can't do that now because the tournaments are ranking events, so nobody has that degree of fun anymore. It's too serious now, and
Yeah.
I don't agree with it being a ranking event mainly because it's not a snooker tournament. You don't play by the official rules of the game of snooker. So yes, it's a ranking event, but it's not a snooker ranking event because the rules are different.
Okay, cool. And I guess since you are so experienced, do you have any advice for those fishermen pros?
Yes, I'm often asked this question. You know, people will come up to me and say, well, you know, what does my son have to be like to turn pro? What does he have to do? And my advice is, and it's a sad thing really, it's not natural for a person to do this, but you have to live your teenage years when you're in your 30s. You have to forget about going out with your friends and drinking and having a good time, and ideally, really, you should remain single for as long as possible so you can just focus on your sport and become better and better at it. You've got to find that you can't just practice all day long in a room with no windows, hitting balls into pockets with a wooden stick. It's not natural. You've got to live a life, but ideally, if you get married and have children, that's a different way of life. You choose that, or you choose your profession.
Yeah.
And you know, there's nothing wrong with choosing either way, but you have to be dedicated. My favourite player probably of all time is probably Stephen Hendry because of his amazing dedication to the game.
Yeah.
He used to practice 5 or 6 hours a day through his teenage years and his 20s because he wanted to be the best in the world, and he was willing to do anything to be the best in the world, to a point where almost I'd say changed his personality. He's a very sportsman-like person. I find he's got an arrogance to him, Stephen Hendry, that great sportsmen have, and that's all because of the practice he did for so long in his youth, and
Yeah.
that's why I've got such a tremendous respect for Stephen.
Yeah, I guess because you said you were doing some commentary job or work, and then I met Stephen in the World Championship earlier in April, and he's also doing that for BBC.
Yes.
Have you worked together sometime?
I have been in the same TV studio as Stephen. Stephen works for BBC predominantly.
Yeah.
I work mainly for Eurosport. I do a lot for Matchroom, and I do the
okay.
BBC Welsh Open for BBC Wales every year. I've done that for 20 odd years. I started commentating probably in the late 1990s.
Yeah.
And I've worked for Eurosport since the early 2000s, and I still do that. And I've been a professional 31 years. I'll have to do well this year to stay on the tour. I have to go up a few places, and if I don't, I'm definitely going to retire. And you know, I wouldn't play in Q School. I just about stayed on the tour at the end of last season.
Yeah.
But I will at some point very soon want to focus full time on broadcasting commentary, so I enjoy it.
Cool. And finally, I heard that you went to Shanghai quite a few times during the Shanghai Masters.
Yeah.
Could you give some words to those people in China about how much you like competing or playing and staying in China?
Well, listen, I mean, I love travelling. I love flying to far off countries. It was always a great pleasure for me to first of all go to Shanghai in 2007, which I think was the first time I'd ever been to China.
Oh,
and
2007?
2007.
Oh, 15 years ago.
Yeah, and I won the first ever Shanghai Masters.
Wow.
In 2007, and that was a great honour. It was a great chance because I think if you've never been to China, Shanghai's a great place because it's so westernised, and you've got these wonderful restaurants on the Bund, and it's a great place. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I've been to so many other places in China: Beijing, Daqing, Guangzhou. You know, so many places. It's always a great pleasure to meet the fans in China because snooker is so important in China, and I think it's important for the players. Who they idolise, they watch them on the television. When we go out there to give something back and really meet and engage with everybody, and I'm a big fan of China. I love China. I love their way of life, and they're just wonderful cities in China. It's always been a pleasure going there.
Yeah, hopefully next year China can open the door and welcome you again.
I hope so. I hope I'm still playing to actually go there again.
Yeah. Thank you very much for your time,
Pleasure,
Dominic.
Lily. Thank you.
Thank you too.